Didn't catch it. Let me mute everybody. And all right, one more is joining us. All right. Okay. Welcome, everybody. My marketing campaigns and special events students. As a common courtesy, if you would show your face on screen, that would be helpful to our special speaker, who is Nick Ellis. I'm meeting him for the first time, although he and I have been communicating on marketing Twitter for a long time. I've been a fan of his company, Halo, his brand specialist superstar. Paul spoke in class before, and this is one of the top brand agencies in the world. So without further ado, let me shut up and say, welcome, Nick. Take it away.
Hey, right. I'm going to now try and share my screen, which is always the terrifying bit. So let's hold on, everyone. Bear with. Okay.
It's looking good. It's looking good.
Okay, that's exciting. Now let's try and make it full screen.
Yep.
Okay. Hopefully we're full screen. Yeah. Still.
Yeah, it looks good. Yeah. I mean, I see this. I see the screen here.
So you should see. It should look like an angel.
Yes, a halo. Yep.
Harder written on it.
Yep.
Okay. And so I'm now going to try just going to the next slide, which is an apology for being late. Can you see that? Just checking we're moving. It should say, sorry, I'm late.
I don't see. I still see.
My screen is paused. Let me try again. I'm going to try again because it just said my screen was paused.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the angel. Oh, there it is. Now I see. Sorry, I'm late.
Yeah. Okay. There we go. Okay.
Now we're good.
Sorry, I'm late. 4 days late. 4 actual days late.
Well, it was me that screwed up, not you, my friend.
Well, you're very kind. But so let's dive in. Let's dive in.
Yes, sir. Take it away.
Okay. Oops, let's just move it on. Okay, so I suppose I'm starting because so my name's Nick, and quite rightly, I run an agency in the UK, but I don't expect any of you to have actually heard of me at all. But I'm just going to give you a brief overview. So Halo is a top 100 UK branding agency. We say we shape brands that grab attention and capture imagination. We've been going for 19 years. So we are a full service branding agency. So that means that we give brands unfair advantages on pack, on shelf, on screen, on walls, on lines, and on minds. I suppose the way to really describe it is like we work with a lot of international clients. So Halo is the digital global agency for Live Nation and Ticketmaster. We're also the global agency for Church and Dwight, who make Trojan condoms and various other things like Batiste dry hair shampoo, etc. We also do a lot of work for Bacardi. So in terms of sort of global brands you may know, and we do a lot of work in FMCG, both in the UK and across Europe. And today I'm going to, well, hopefully it's going to be an interesting talk. It's going to sort of capture this idea about commercial creativity. So apologies already, because I absolutely love talking about branding and advertising. I can get overexcited and talk too much. So I'm going to try to be as succinct and tight as I possibly can. Right. So the name of this talk is Artistic License. And really the subheader to that is how to be creative and other things that can't be taught and there are no rules for. So without further ado, let's start with Nick's 3 definitive rules of creativity. Plus, what I've done is on the slides, I've included an exciting film quiz, which you are welcome to play along in your own heads. So let's start. 1. Okay, when you're thinking about marketing and advertising, it's really important to keep this in mind. No one cares about anything that you have to say. So I think why do I say that? Well, there's a book by a guy called Simon Sinek. I don't know if any of you have come across that, but it's called Start With Why. And it's a controversial book in marketing circles. I mean, really focuses on this idea of brand purpose and really for looking for brands to find their purpose beyond the things that they do and have that sort of societal, social impact. I don't mind any of that. I actually agree with a lot of those sentiments, but I think it's better to start with no one gives a fuck. If you start there, things will work better for you. According to Forbes, and I'm not saying Forbes are the definitive on advertising, but according to Forbes, people are, and they class it in inverted commas, are subjected to over 5,000 pieces of advertising and branded content every single day. And so the question there is, why would anyone be interested in anything you have to say if they're being assaulted with that many branded messages? That's through advertising, out home, TV, on social. In fact, every single touch point that you may, every single touch point of your life, brands are involved. So if you've got 5,000 pieces of branded content that you're being subjected to, you have to be better. You have to be more interesting. You have to think of it this way. We live in the attention economy. So any content that you create, anything that you put out there with a commercial idea behind it, it has to be relevant to the audience that you're trying to reach. It has to be interesting. And I think arguably it has to be entertaining. Because when it comes to advertising, when it comes to any type of marketing where we're trying to grab people's attention, we've got to make sure that we grab their attention. We have to startle them. We have to intrigue them. We have to engage them. And once we've done that, we have to capture their imaginations. So I'm going to look at two ads. Now, these are actually from sort of the 80s, actually from the 70s and 80s. So the one on the left, they're both for Porsche, obviously. The one on the left, I love. You may get lost, but not in the crowd. Now, why is that such a key piece of advertising for Porsche? Well, it's really simple. It uses the distinctive asset of the actual product itself to define the message that it gives to the audience. So that's the Porsche 911. That's a classic Porsche 911. That's a piece of beautiful art from the late 70s. It's the shape which is iconic, that kind of lovely sweeping back to the front. It's got that really beautiful Epi 5-spoke alloy wheels. It's just got this lovely flow. It's very much the iconic Porsche. So when they say you may get lost, but not in the crowd, it's got two meanings, right? It's got the literal meaning of it's an iconic car. It's got an iconic shape. It cannot be mistaken. But equally, it speaks to this idea of aspiration, about sitting in a sports car, which is unlike other sports cars. It plays to a very simple idea about what we want from a high performance sports car. And actually this idea of I want to be looked at, I want to be seen, I want people to know that I own this product. Now later, actually about 5 years later, Porsche play to this in a really interesting way. So on the right hand side, they deliver this again for the 911. You can see the slight subtle change. It's a little bit more aggressive now a few years later, but still an iconic car, still carrying the iconic Porsche look. And then the headline, honestly now, did you spend your youth dreaming about someday owning a Nissan or a Mitsubishi? Now, that line, although maybe a little bit cheeky, a little bit punchy, what it is it brings much needed humor, I think, to the Porsche canon. And it makes it a thoroughly interesting advert because absolutely that speaks to a simple human truth when it comes to this category, is that actually when you think of what an aspirational sports car actually is, you don't think of a Nissan. You certainly don't think of a Mitsubishi. Well, arguably, you might look at something I mean, don't get me wrong, there's some great Japanese cars, but what they don't have is the iconic reputation of the Porsche. And absolutely, they don't have the reputation of the 911. Both of these ads are talking to the audience about the same thing. They're saying the same thing. but they're just fundamentally playing around with some key ideas around distinctive brand assets. And the distinctive brand assets are not limited, of course, to the logo or to the colorways that the brand uses. They're really leaning into the absolute truth about this brand and the actual product itself. So they're laser focused on the product, and they're laser focused on the audience motivation. They really understand the audience motivation. Let's look at another one. So before I do that, I'm going to just stop with a little bit of a reminder from David Ogilvy. So David Ogilvy is, I don't know what you would, the godfather of advertising, and one of the most important books. I mean, Ogilvy on advertising was one of the most important books that you can read. And even though it was written decades ago, there's truth in there worth discovering. And he said this, he said, on average, 5 times as many people read the headline as read the body copy. When you've written your headline, you've spent 80 cents out of your dollar. Now, it's a real truth that we really need to understand as anyone working in marketing or advertising. And that is, most people will not read the body copy. Most people don't have time for that shit. So we need to make sure that the headlines that we create and the way that we direct and art direct the creative, that they are immediate, that I don't need to read anything else to understand what the brand is trying to say to me. Because we have to recognize, again, we live in the attention economy, and the attention that we have, or the attention that we as consumers have for brands is tiny, it's minute. So we have to make sure, as David Ogilvy quite rightly points out here, that the headline is everything. That one moment you have to stop someone in their tracks, that is everything. And we need to focus most of our attention there. If we can get them, then we can get them in the room, we can talk to them. But first of all, we've got to get in the room. I'm going to look at this. Just because I've just done Porsche, I thought it'd be quite nice to look at something which is quintessentially English. So this is for the Mini. So this is actually from the sort of late 70s. So this is at the time when Mini wasn't owned by BMW. It was its own brand. It was an Austin Mini. And I love this ad because it actually plays to everything. The tropes of sports cars that actually Porsche was still playing with there. It kind of lampoons them here. So it says, you don't need a big one to be happy. Now, there's a reason for that. Obviously, because traditionally when men go out and buy a sports car, it's because they've got shortcomings in other areas. And this plays to that simple joke, right? You don't need a big one to be happy. And then this beautiful, huge photograph of the car. What you kind of need to bear in mind is that when this came out, no one had ever seen anything quite like it. It's this tiny, weeny, I mean, comparison to what Mini does today, these genuinely are probably about 3/4 of the size. So the Austin Mini is truly tiny. You can get 4 people in it in a push, but it's also got an iconic shape, much like the Porsche. It's kind of got this little boxy, sort of cutesy shape to it. Most famously, obviously, you see the Mini in the film The Italian Job, if you ever get a chance to see that, where they drive Minis around the city. And it's actually quite a spectacular piece of stunt. But anyway, the point here is, let's look at the advert and the way that it's laid out. So you've got this big slapping headline. You don't need a big one to be happy. You've got this striking image of the car. But where this piece of advertising wins is right at the bottom, where it says happiness is Mini shaped. Now, it doesn't say Mini, it has a picture of the Mini. I have to fill in the blanks. If I'm reading this advert, by me, but as a creative, if you push your audience to engage with the advert for a little bit longer, and in this case, this is like a second, that is a win. Because if I'm getting someone to think about that line and think about how to replace that image with an actual name or with a product name, I'm winning. Because what we're trying to do every time we get into advertising is a fundamental. We're trying to create front of mind recall in our audience. So at the point when they're entering the category and they're looking to buy, so in this case, I'm looking to buy a small vehicle, we want Mini to be front of mind. We want that to be the #1 brand and the #1 car that our consumer will be thinking about. There is this sort of interesting fact actually about advertising, which is within any category at any time, 95% of your audience is not in a position to buy. So you only have 5% who are actually in the market now to buy a car. But there's 95% of our potential audience, our addressable audience, that we need to start building positive perception. We need to start building memory structures within their brains so that they recall our brand at the point when they're into considering, or they've moved into that consideration part of the buying cycle. Little tricks like happiness is mini shaped do a brilliant job of slowly but surely building these memory structures in our audience. And they can be very, very effective. Let's look at another one. This one's for Daihatsu. It's riffing on the same theme, also genius. Picks up 5 times more women than a Lamborghini. Now, bear in mind that this is from the 80s. So those sort of jokes were definitely allowed. I think it's really interesting again, though, because both Mini and Daihatsu here are lampooning the ridiculousness of middle-aged men buying sports cars. And what they're doing is really focusing on the benefit. This is brilliant for that reason. So you've got the product front and center. You can see it's full of people. So we already know that it's small, but it's an excellent people carrier. So we can see that from the visual. But then the picks up 5 times more women than a Lamborghini obviously makes a dig at sports cars. And it sort of, at the same time, is celebrating the practicality of this vehicle. So that's the absolute basics of it, I think works incredibly well. The other thing, though, is this. If you're in the market to buy a Lamborghini, you're absolutely not buying a Daihatsu. So it's not talk. We don't give a shit about if you want to buy a sports car. If you're a sports car buyer, then obviously we're not for you. So we're going to use that whole other category of performance sports cars as an entry point for anyone in the market to buy this people carrier. So we're kind of playing off one category from another, in this case, sort of the classic family vehicles versus the big sports cars. And we're kind of merging them in a way which suddenly makes it thoroughly interesting. Just the word Lamborghini above the Daihatsu is a powerful visual statement because it immediately is arresting and it makes you read the rest of the ad. So I always find it fascinating when you go back to the past and you look at actually some of these key ideas that we think of as good practicing marketing and good practicing advertising. And actually, nothing's really changed that much. I'm going to go one step further to prove this point. Okay. So this is one of the most famous ads. Oops, dropped my pen. This is one of the most famous ads of all time. So this is Think Small by VW. And it sort of is one of those ones where it's so lauded in our industry because it does some really thoroughly interesting things. So it breaks with convention because the product, the product shot, the shot of the car is tiny. It's a tiny, tiny part of the advert. In fact, what it does is it plays to the white space. So it allows this big sea of actually light grey space to really frame the image of the car. And suddenly that really draws your attention. And then you combine it with this really simple idea of think small. Now, think small does a really basic thing there because we're always talking about thinking big. So thinking small is just this nice little twist. But really, to get under the skin of why that's a brilliant advert is you actually have to look at the landscape or the context in which this advert lands. So in the 60s, when this came out, America is kind of the home of the automobile, right? I mean, actually, we romanticize in this country and across Europe, we romanticize about American cars. they hold a great deal of sway in the sort of collective imagination. But in the 60s, America was a market of massive cars, really great big gas guzzling, big ass cars. That's what it was. That's what we sold. That's what General Motors sold to the populace, huge whales of vehicles. So when VW wanted to break into that market, VW had this quirky, European, slightly cutesy, sort of funny looking car, which could just about get 4 people comfortably in it, but it was poles apart from anything else on the roads in the States at the time. So why is this advert great? Well, first of all, it's already playing to the trope, right? People in America at the time could not believe that that was a real car. They thought of it as a toy car. So by making it super small on the page, they're playing to that trope. Then the think small, the twist on the think big. What's the body copy say? I won't bore you by reading it. What it actually says is, yeah, this car is small, but so is the cost of buying it. So is the cost of filling the tank. So is the cost of putting oil in it. It then talks about how this small car can go 40,000 miles on one set of tires. And its big punchline, this car is cheap to run. This car has got a small amount of money that you're going to need to invest to keep it on the road. It says, if you think small, then you're thinking smart. You're thinking about the value that you're getting from your car. You're thinking about the cost of filling up a tank and how far you can go on it. It's making you think about all of the problems you might have with your great big beautiful Cadillac and comparing it to all of the value that you will find in a car like this. They actually, so it is a classic, brilliant piece of thinking. But let's look at this. They actually back up. I love this advert because I love the line, slightly convertible. And obviously you've got that little sunroof there. Now, why is that? We look at it now and go, well, that's just a sunroof. But again, you go back to when this car launched. And what this advert basically says is, in the States, you either have a hardtop or you have a convertible. That's roughly what all of these car manufacturers are giving you. They're giving you one or the other. And we at VW, we don't think it should be top on or top down or hardtop. We think there's a middle ground. And so what they're saying is, for this particular model, we've got a sunroof in there, and it's a factory fitted sunroof. So at the time, in the late 60s, that was a really expensive, that was a piece of luxury. So if you went out and you bought Ford, for example, and you had a factory sunroof fitted, that would be very expensive. In this particular ad, it talks about that sunroof is only $90 more. So what it's saying is, this small car, which is incredibly affordable anyway, is incredibly affordable to run, also can come with a bit of luxury that you could never normally afford in the American cars that you're buying. It suddenly makes this all about, not just about the value, it makes it aspirational as well, because having a sunroof was a big deal. And so being able to have a sunroof makes that suddenly this aspirational vehicle, not just this small, quirky, but cheap to run car, suddenly has an edge that VW hadn't displayed before. So both Think Small and Slightly Convertible are incredibly focused on the positive value that can be gained from the car, and totally understands the market that it's in. It understands how different it is compared to any other vehicle on the roads in the States at the time. I mean, obviously we all know now how big VW became, and actually how ubiquitous VW has been in American automobile culture. How important it is now, how important it was from the revolution of the late 60s, early 70s in culture, and how ingrained in that culture VW became. But what we don't really appreciate is actually some of the clever, really, really well-targeted and thought out advertising that VW did. So look, I'm going to finish this little bit with my favorite ever car ad. It's my favorite ever car ad because it is absolute genius, again from Porsche. But it works on this basic idea called the pratfall effect. So nobody's perfect. So you've got nobody's perfect as your headline, 1983 Le Mans results. So there we have the Le Mans results, and we have, but Porsche's won everything. They've got the first 8 places, then they drop one to BMW, and then they come in again with the 10th, right? So what Porsche could have done was say, I don't know, so at the 1983 Le Mans results, Porsche got every place on the podium. They could have just said that. But that in itself is not that exciting, right? Because, you know, so you won the first 3, you got the first, second, and third place in the race. But this is the killer bit. They use the pratfall effect. They point out their imperfection. And by pointing out their imperfection, it draws your attention to how perfect they actually are. The other thing that it does is it's designed to make you read why they're imperfect. Because if you just quickly said, look, we got the top 3 places in Le Mans 1983, you would move on quite quickly. What Porsche recognize is that by using the pratfall effect, by pointing out their imperfections, there is a likelihood that you'll want to know why and you'll want to know more. And so they go on to tell you, there is no tougher endurance race than Le Mans. Over 3,000 punishing miles in 24 hours at speeds often in excess of 200 miles per hour. Last year, Porsche took the first 5 places. This year, the first 8. Next year, who knows? There's always room for improvement. There's always room for improvement. And what they're telling you is that we're already the best. We are already the ultimate sports car that you can buy. We are the winner of the toughest 24-hour race known to man, and we still think there's room to get better. So when you're starting to compare Porsche or Sauber BMW, we already know that Porsche are the best here. They can prove it. And because they've made such an arresting piece of advertising, the chances are that actually everyone knows why, everyone knows those details, that idea of that sort of feat of engineering excellence, which allows you to win a race like that. So it's a brilliant piece of advertising. The other thing, the reason I like it is because out of all car ads, the one thing it doesn't have is a car on it, because it doesn't need it, because the word Porsche alone is an incredible distinctive asset. So what do these ads fundamentally have in common? Okay, so they're great advertising because they convey a simple, distinct product or brand truth. So they're very laser focused about what they want you to know and learn about the brand. And they're very good at making you think about that product's truth. And what they then do is they make it feel really important. They make that product truth feel meaningful, and then they make it memorable, so that it triggers all of those memory structures that we're trying to build. And so when someone enters the category considering to buy, we're triggering front of mind recall. So hang on, let's get off cars, but kind of not get off cars. So this is an advertising campaign by Halo. So the business you won't have heard of, but St. James's Place are they're I don't know, $8 billion. Actually, yeah, $9 billion turnover investment bank. So not particularly sexy. And this is actually for their B2C arm. This is when they sell pensions to people. And selling pensions is, to be quite honest, fucking boring, because no one really wants to think about the future, and no one really wants to give away their money for a future that they cannot yet see. Pensions are boring. But there is another way of looking at it. And actually, I thought I'd show it because I love cars, and I actually love classic American cars. And this is obviously one of the most iconic. A pink Cadillac. Could not pick a better vehicle. And what we wanted to do here was get people to think about the retirement they may want. So here we got 2 blokes having a lovely time, sitting in their glorious pink Cadillac, and the headline, "Retiring Maybe, Never Shy." So it plays to it's a very English headline. In England, we would talk about being shy and retiring. And if we talk about someone being shy and retiring, what we mean in the UK is that they're very meek, that they're very quiet, that they're sort of very restrained, maybe a bit boring. Shy and retiring is not necessarily a great thing. It's sort of not it's not the compliment that you want to give. So what we do is we take a very famous idea of shy and retiring, we flip it on its head. So retiring maybe, but never shy. And obviously we're using the cartoon effect here. So the cartoon effect is when we make sure that our headline plays off against the whatever image we're using. So obviously never shy. You can't be shy if you're going to drive around town in a pink Cadillac. And then the body copy, which notably you'll notice that there is a very subtle arrow. The way that we've done the bottom panel is a very subtle arrow which points towards very simple line of copy, which says, for the adventures you want, for retirement on your terms. So that simple message, which says, if you choose a pension with St. James's Place, then you are saving for a future which is going to be better, more adventurous, going to be more fun. It's going to be a retirement worth looking forward to, rather than this sort of murky, weird, not sure what the future is going to hold, pumping money into something that I can't really see the value of now. It says there is value to that. And that value is going to be found in the fun that you're going to have. It says that actually we think pensions should be about giving you a retirement which is adventurous and exploratory, that is better. It's a positive advert for saving for the future, because it says the future is going to be wicked. So I'm going to just sort of summarize this last bit. Nobody wants to be sold to. I think it's really important that you think about this. No one seeks out your advertising. Obviously, I seek out advertising, but I'm really geeky. No one is waiting for your email. If you're doing email marketing, no one is waiting for your email. And I think this is important. No one checks their timeline hoping to see your promoted post linking to your latest blog article. No one does that. And actually, here's a little note. I think it's a good time to talk about content marketing. So content marketing was sold to the masses about 10 years ago as the panacea for spiraling advertising budgets. So it basically said, don't use mass market advertising. Use the internet, use digital channels. So use your social and your own websites and things like Medium or Substack. Use these, create content which is designed around your audience, and just give them as much content as you can. But the problem is, that's like kind of turning on a tap and filling the internet with shit, because not all content is good, and not all content is worthwhile to the audience at any one time. And in fact, in terms of building consistent memory structures about brands, it's been proven to be fairly ineffective. But I have a way of thinking about this. It's a note on content marketing. Never before in history have so many said so much to so few. There is still a role for content marketing, absolutely, but it will never replace mass market reach, telling stories from a brand to as many people as possible, on the basis that 95% of my market is not going to be in a position to buy. So we need to consistently put our brands in front of audiences. Interestingly enough, John Hegarty said, he was saying that actually, and so he had a lot to say about advertising, but he makes this point that actually it's important that even people who would never buy from you, who would never choose your brand, know who you are, know your brand, and have real knowledge about what you sell. Because if someone who would never normally buy your product knows about you, that means that your brand is now famous. And brand fame is what builds brand loyalty and what effectively grows brands in total. So as a last part, just remember this: all marketing is unwanted and you're interrupting people's lives. So if you're going to crash the party, bring champagne. That's point one. Let's go on to point two, because there's 3 rules of creativity which cannot be taught. Let's start with this. Number 2, never underestimate your audience. So the enemy is creativity is the arrogant assumption that people won't get it. Now, from my perspective, I come up against this a lot. So as an agency, we do a lot of advertising, and we have to deal with a lot of chief marketing officers and marketing teams working for brands. And I kind of think it's this problem, which I see a lot. So it's this idea that dialing back creative ideas in case some people don't immediately understand what you're trying to say is both insulting and potentially damaging to your brand. And I think of it this way. I get this a lot, where the marketing manager will say, I get the ad, I get it, but I'm not sure the audience will. And then you're thinking, well, is the idea really that cerebral? I mean, let's go back to the 2 blokes driving a pink Cadillac. It's not that clever. The clever bit is the use of language, but the actual advert's not clever at all. It's very simple in the way that it works. So will our audience get it? Well, I'd say the majority of people are clever enough to make that link. But the most important thing is that I treat the audience with the respect they deserve. I don't think for 1 second that someone wouldn't have the smarts to understand what I am trying to say. I don't think I'm that good. So I often say to clients is, the important thing is, yeah, some people may not get it, but don't shoot for average. You don't have to strive for safe, because if you're safe and you're average, you're wallpaper and you will get forgotten. So I'm going to show you what I mean, sticking to the subject of cars, because I like cars, why not? This is this is what BMW used to do. So this is from the 70s. Now BMW have this headline: the more you know about cars, the more you want a BMW. And then obviously that's a very classic, beautiful BMW at the bottom of the ad. There's a really important point here about the art direction. What makes BMW famous is the grille. And if you go right back to the very early BMWs, you have that slightly rounded shape, but the grille is what's famous. It is a distinctive brand asset, probably more so than the logo. That grille is iconic. So they use it very well. They actually, most of the car is actually sort of like crunched into that bottom third of the ad, but the grille is front and center. So that's really important. But the more you know about cars, the more you want a BMW. What this is saying is, if you are clued up, if you really care about engineering, if you really are someone who loves cars and wants the best, then you will choose BMW, because that's the intelligent choice. BMW is the thoughtful choice. BMW is the brand that you choose when you understand what makes a great car. So this advert is very clever because it plays to this idea of aspiration by BMW, they're awesome, but it also plays to this idea that people want to be seen as making a good choice, which plays into this idea of social proof. So people want to be seen to be making the right decisions. They want others around them to think they've made the right decision. Social proof is an incredibly powerful emotion that people have. So this advert brilliantly plays to a number of ideas which really affect the emotional triggers in a consumer. So this is what they used to do. Let's look at what they do now. Okay. All wheels for all weathers. X-Drive, the intelligent four-wheel drive from BMW. I mean, that's shit, isn't it? It's shit. And why is it shit? Okay. So I've actually got this car. So, and it's a great car. But firstly, from the art direction point of view, it could be any car. It could be a Mercedes. It could be an Audi. It's not using one of the most important parts of the BMW, which is the iconic grille. So therefore, it's just advertising a touring estate. It doesn't, without the, if I used the thumb test and I covered up that logo, there is a chance you wouldn't know what car it was. So that's already bad. But more importantly, if I replaced that car with a Land Rover or a Jeep, it would be doing the same thing. What this ad does is it advertises four-wheel drive, and it advertises anyone who has four-wheel drive. So it's a total fail in terms of building any type of memory structure, playing to any form of distinctive brand asset. And it's really boring. I mean, yes, it's a lovely photograph, but it's a really boring ad. But that's not even the worst of it. Check this out. Emotions versus emissions, passion wins. What? I mean, what? Let's break that down. Emotions versus emissions, passion wins. That literally means fuck all. It says nothing. It means nothing. No one's going to hate it. No one's going to hate it. You can definitely go in front of anyone in the marketing department who've got to go to the board and say emotions versus emissions, passion wins, and they will be able to sign it off because it's totally innocuous drivel. You can't hate it. But if you can't hate it, that means you can't love it either. And if you can't hate it or love it, then you won't remember it. It has no value. It doesn't work for the brand because it doesn't try to make the brand memorable. It's not even trying hard with that beautiful photograph. I mean, again, lovely photograph, and you could argue that obviously it showed the grille, but then I'm not even sure what it's trying to tell me. I think it's probably something about electric cars. I don't know. And actually, I don't care. And that's even worse. So the rule here is you've got to say some interesting things and maybe say some challenging things. But I think the most important thing to remember when you're thinking about how you're going to talk to your audience is give them a little credit. Respect their time. Make your advertising worth their time. Let's look at some people doing it well. So this is a magazine. This is for a magazine called The Economist. Now, The Economist is really quite highbrow. So it's very political. It's got some really interesting ideas around the economy and around business. So it's really very much that, yeah, it's talking a lot. It's like the Financial Times. It's a very sort of high-end magazine. And so instead of saying, look, we're the ones to come to if you want to know about the economy and you want to know about business, they don't bother with any of that. Their distinctive asset is their covers are always red. So immediately they're using the distinctive asset of their color really well. And then they just pose that simple question. Would you like to sit next to you at dinner? As in, are you well read? Have you got interesting ideas? Have you got something to say? Would you be good company? And what it's saying is, it's asking that question of yourself. Would I be good at a dinner party? Have I got anything to say? Am I worldly? And actually, if you question whether you would be, maybe The Economist is for you. Let's look at something else they've done. This is a good one. I never read The Economist. Management trainee, aged 42. So fantastic piece of advertising because it's telling you that if you do read The Economist, then that's going to help you progress in your chosen career. It's going to help you get a career of note. And by saying management trainee, age 42, that's saying, well, you're not going to make it. It's already too late there. But I love that. I love the headline of I never read The Economist. So that already gaps your attention because it's obviously in The Economist font. So you're using that lovely red, which is a distinctive asset, a lovely font, which is also a distinctive asset. And then the management trainee aged 42 is the kicker. They do it again. Let's look at another great Economist ad. Somebody mentions Jordan. You think of a Middle Eastern country with a 3.3% growth rate. So this is the Economist in America. Obviously, they're talking about Michael Jordan. And at the time, when this came out, Michael Jordan is at the height of his fame, and they drop this. And what they're not insulting Michael Jordan or his legacy, certainly not. What they are saying, though, are you the type of person who knows what's going on in the Middle East? Are you the type of person with that type of business smarts where you really understand not only your economy, but the world economy? Because if you are, you read The Economist. And if you don't, maybe you should read The Economist. It's a nice piece of advertising. But what it never, ever does, what The Economist is brilliant at doing, is it never dumbs its advertising down. It never goes for the lowest common denominator. It's laser focused on an audience, which it says, if you read The Economist, you want this type of advertising. And that's how it draws you in. You feel affiliated to that ad. If you're an Economist reader, that makes sense to you. That's congratulating you. And if you're not an Economist reader, it's telling you to get clever and come and read us. So there is another way of doing it. I'm going to show you something that we did. So you could be super, super clever and, really play to lots of great ideas, or you could do what we've done here and you can just pull out a pop culture reference, but you can frame it in an unexpected way. So we pulled out the DeLorean. I mean, we remade the DeLorean. That's we've rebuilt that in CG. So CGI, so it's very nicely done. But we styled it like a car ad. So it's got that very beautiful, got the lovely, beautiful shadowing. You've got all of this loveliness. It's actually kind of clean and slicker than you see it in the film. But it is unmistakably the DeLorean from Back to the Future. But do you know what it's selling? It's effectively selling a conference call line. So that little box in the right-hand corner, that's effectively so it's effectively a conference call facility so that everyone could phone in from all around the world and you can share files and show things on screens. But really, that's all it is. It's a B2B ad. So this is telling businesses that if you buy this piece of equipment, it's going to make talking to businesses in other parts of the world easier. That's all it's going to do. But that's fucking boring. No one cares about that stuff. So we need to make them care about that stuff. So first of all, we use a great big picture of the DeLorean from Back to the Future, because wherever we ran this, and it was always in business publications, that's an unexpected image. So immediately we've got something very, very famous, which you don't expect to see, in a very stylish way, art's directed in a way you've not seen before. And then we have the line, it's big ideas that make the world smaller. Because obviously this is a time machine. Nothing makes the world smaller than a time traveling magic car. But what that does do is it makes you think about what's the box in the right-hand corner. And then the body copy is going to go on to tell you that this box in the right-hand corner is going to revolutionize the way that your business talks to other businesses all around the world. So it's a really simple idea. And it's using a pop culture reference for business for a very serious piece of equipment, very serious sales. And it does it in a fun way, but it's all about getting attention before we tell the story. So the two rules so far, we sort of, that's really looking at creativity and how we can harness it and how we can shape it. But I think there's a third, which I think is more personal. I'm going to try, hopefully it will make sense. So number 3 is make things difficult. But there's a caveat here. Don't be a dick to work with, obviously, but make things difficult. So I say, look, so for our clients, we always talk about ourselves as being the expert outsider. And we say it's our job to see things differently. Because as an agency, it's our job to come in and help a client really think differently about the way that they work or the way that their brand is performing. And it's to challenge those perspectives. Our job is to ask stupid questions. I think it's a truth to say there are no such thing as stupid questions. And I've learned every time I've gone into a client, I had to learn about the industry. I've had to learn about their category. I've had to learn about their product. I've had to learn about their audience. And you only do that by asking the questions that you don't know the answer to, stupid or not. There is never, ever a problem with asking what looks on the surface to be a stupid question. So at Halo, we have a book, and the Halo book is called Preach, because we don't have enough imagination to sort of move off of the sort of religious thing that we've got going on. But Preach is an agency manifesto. It's what we send out to all of our clients. So when you come onto Halo's roster as a client, this is the thing that we send you. And it's a manifesto for who we are and what we believe and our ethics and our ideals. But there's part of it which is what we call the manifesto for clients. And really, I'm going to use it to explain what I mean when I say be difficult. So we open proceedings with the famous obey no one. And I think this is sort of sets the tone for where I want to go. So the first thing we talk about is don't expect obedience, because there's a difference between being appointed and employed. So when you work for a client, they've appointed you to work for them. They don't employ you. You could walk at any time. They've appointed you to help them with a marketing or an advertising problem. There is a transaction taking place. We're absolutely fulfilling a requirement, right? So we're meeting whatever need they have, but we're not employees, we're partners. And because we're partners, it's our job to challenge them, to ask them difficult questions, to give them original answers. We always say to them, we are trying to do significant work for you, and we cannot do it without you. It's a partnership. This is not about, we are a service industry, obviously, but our work itself is not a service. You have to think of it as a partnership. And if you start thinking of it as a partnership, it makes the whole relationship easier going forward if you're trying to deliver really creative and original work. Then we say this, it's okay that we're not the same. And this is my point earlier. We always say to our clients, you appoint us because we're the expert outsider, and the word outsider is the important bit, because we don't work for your business. We have no idea how to run your business. We don't want to run your business. It's our job to think differently about it. We have absolutely different skills. So we need to make that difference work for us. So we would never, ever tell a client how to run their business, but therefore we don't expect them to tell us how to define, position, or shape a brand, because that's our job. So when they appointed us as experts, we just have to deliver on that expertise. We always say to them, we promise you, we are the experts that you thought we were. But it is absolutely right that we're not the same, because if we were the same, we can't see your business in a new and interesting and hopefully original way. Thirdly, and this is absolutely true when we talk about commercial creativity, it's about outcomes, not outputs. So it's not about the shit. Actually, I suppose when I was talking about content marketing earlier, content marketing is often about quantity over quality. We only care about quality. We want really great work to go out into the world, but because we are a commercial business doing commercial work, we need that work to be effective. So we say to our clients, you want our best, most effective work, and we want to give it to you. But that's the sort of the origins of what we call commercial creativity. But the only way that works is by looking at the outcomes. So have we moved the needle? Did we increase sales? Did we increase audience or addressable audience size? Have we broken you into a new category? Have we delivered MPD onto shelves with a deal with your distribution deal? Have we done marketing for you, which has actually had a demonstrable difference and made a demonstrable difference to the bottom line? Because we say this to them, and I think this is absolutely right. In our jobs, it's a commercial endeavor. We want to do really creative, beautiful work, but it's a commercial endeavor. So we need to deliver numbers. We need to deliver financial results. No one comes to an advertising agency unless they want to make more money. And so that leads me on to the fourth part of this, which is we're valuable, not expensive. Our work is an investment in commercial success of a business that we work with. And so we never, ever talk about budget. I never talk to clients about budget or cost, ever. I only ever talk about investment and what investment they need to make. So we think of it, our ideas, our talent, our objectivity, our expertise, they're all worth whatever the fee is, because we generate significant commercial success. That's why people come to us. That's why we work with the clients that we do. That's why we are Live Nation and Ticketmaster's global agency, because we help them sell tickets to gigs and festivals and sporting events all around the world. We help them make sure that they have sellout shows. That's why they come to us. They don't come to us because our websites look super cool. They do, by the way, but that's not why they come to us. They can go to anyone for cool design. They come to us because we understand how to market. They came to us when it was the Drake tour because they knew that we'd be able to handle Drake's tour and that we'd be able to deliver the numbers that he needed to deliver. They come to us because of the commercial success that we offer them, which is why it's an investment, not a cost. So I always say that you're spending money to make money, and that costs money. So just to wrap it up, though, I think this is a really important point. I said being difficult, it's not just being difficult for the sake of being difficult. It comes down to this. Creativity does require friction. Life is found in friction. That's where all the good stuff is. If everything's easy, that doesn't make it better. Actually, sometimes a little bit of toil, a little bit of difficulty, a lot of friction will make work better. So you should look for that friction. Because if you look for the friction, you might just find an interesting insight, a new perspective, an observation, which helps you connect your audience in a way which has not been done before. And if you can't find friction, maybe create a little bit of friction. Maybe push your clients to think a little bit harder about the way their brand is performing. Maybe they need to think a little bit differently about the audiences they're trying to reach. Maybe they need to think a little bit more about the 4 Ps of marketing and actually do more than just promotion. But our job as an agency is to deliver what it's respectful friction, it's deliver respectful challenge and really open up the possibility for the brand to do something creatively powerful and commercially successful. So I'm trying to be succinct. The last words are not going to be from me. And I thought I'd, because obviously I'm sort of right at the end of my journey, I suppose, and you're at the beginning. So I thought I should leave some last words from someone who is far wiser than I, and it's Rick Rubin, who said, never say I can't do that. Say I haven't done that yet. Because that's truly what creativity and marketing and all of this crazy shit that we do for a living is all actually about. Never say I can't do that. Just say I haven't done that yet, and then dive in. That's the end. Any questions?
Right, students, wants to ask a question or put it in the chat box and I'll ask it for you. Thank you so much for that, Nick. It was awesome, fantastic.
No, it's a pleasure.
Who wants to, somebody speak up? Come on. Somebody's got to have a question here in this crowd.
I have a question.
Go on.
So I know you mentioned working with Live Nation and Ticketmaster. They've had some scandals in the past year.
Yeah, they have, haven't they?
How has that affected you, and how have you changed your strategy?
So interestingly, so before you were born, Ticketmaster had an absolute nightmare with Pearl Jam. So Pearl Jam basically refused to have Ticketmaster sell any tickets for them, and it started quite a controversial moment in their history. It's quite interesting that things just come round again. So the same problems still occurring with Ticketmaster. In the UK, not as bad as it's been in the US. You had all the problems with Taylor Swift tickets, of course. In it doesn't really affect us a great deal, to be honest, the reputation that brand has. And partly it's because they have a monopoly. In the UK and Europe, they fundamentally have a monopoly. They by far and away are the biggest ticket seller. And on the whole, so 90% of the time, 95% of the time, they're very successful at it. Interestingly, though, we as an agency have had a lot more abuse from people going, but they're awful. You can't, they're dreadful. You shouldn't work for them. And the interesting thing is, and you kind of, that I can understand that point of view, but they're not, there are worse brands out there to work for. And I would say that Ticketmaster on the whole have been one of the reasons that live music venues are still a thing in the UK and Europe is because of the amount of money that Live Nation puts into grassroots venues. So they're actually a really powerful force for good for emerging music scene. I can't speak to the US because unfortunately, I mean, I've spent a lot of time in the US, but actually, but in the UK and Europe, I can say that if it wasn't for Ticketmaster, a lot of venues that we love and cherish would have gone under. They wouldn't have survived. They wouldn't have survived the pandemic. So I do know the Live Nation spent in the UK alone probably about £100 million. I'm not sure what that is in dollars, in keeping grassroots music venues alive. And so for everything shit that they did, and the Taylor Swift thing is obviously an absolute disaster. Can I say though, we didn't do the Taylor Swift gig. We did do Harry Styles. We have done Drake and various others, but we did the Backstreet Boys Reformation tour of Japan, but we definitely didn't do Taylor Swift. I'm really grateful that we didn't do Taylor Swift now. Did the Chili Peppers, that was nearly a disaster. But yeah, I think that it's interesting how many people give us abuse. Interestingly, a lot of someone actually attacked me on Twitter for working for Ticketmaster, and they work for an agency who work for Nestle. And I'm kind of like, whoa, mate, you can't, you can't really. That's a bit dodgy because they've not been great on ticket sales, but at the same time, they didn't encourage women in third world countries to not breastfeed their own children. So it kind of depends how you view it. But actually, it's an interesting point, though. When you get into agency land, you do have to start thinking about the businesses you do want to work for. So we turned down a number of contracts. One of them was in British tobacco, Imperial Tobacco, and because I don't mind anyone's personal choices. I just don't want to be behind advertising something like tobacco. I think that's not a great thing for us to be involved in, even though the money was good. And then there's a company in the UK called BAE Systems, who are an enormous supplier of military. And they offered us a large amount of money to work with them on a new missile. And we were kind of like, there's a line, right, which we had to draw. And sometimes you kind of go, well, I could probably be driving a Porsche myself now if I'd said yes. I also want to be able to sleep at night. And I kind of think that there's some things that we will never do. Nestle is one of the brands which I won't work for. But I think Ticketmaster, you're right. It's an interesting one. And I'm certainly glad I wasn't involved in that Ferrari.
Is the fact that you were once a rock and roller and listening to your podcast episode on Giles' fabulous call to action, he uncovered the fact that you were a rock and roller, and then you decided to get into this business because you couldn't make money anymore on that business.
That's exactly right. I think that's actually being kind. The reason I got into this business because I wasn't talented enough and I didn't write good enough songs to remain on a record label. I was dropped 3 times. So, and although we were quite big in Holland for a while, made top 75 in Holland. So, it wasn't all bad. You've got Giles coming to speak on Wednesday.
Correct.
He's genuinely amazing. And Gasp are a fantastic agency. So he'll have loads to tell. Hopefully he won't tell any more stories about me.
Anyone else have any other questions, or you want to put it in the chat box? How about some advice on starting out in marketing? You could share some of your thoughts on that.
So okay, I didn't. So I didn't even try. I mean, we alluded to it earlier. I went to art college, so I thought I wanted to be a painter. While I was in art college, I formed a band. Somehow we got signed by a record label and we went on tour. And then after 3 record labels dropped me, I needed to get a job. And that's all that happened. I managed to get a job at a large magazine publisher. I won an award for design at that magazine, a big award ceremony. And while I was at the award ceremony, an advertising agency boss whose designer hadn't won the award came up and said, I'm looking for, you just won this award. You should come and join my agency. We're award winning. You should be with me. And I was like, I'm kind of interested in advertising. I quite liked the. I thought it was going to be more glamorous than it is, but nonetheless, I loved the idea of coming up with creative solutions for business problems, which is fundamentally what marketing is. It's just taking this, looking at what a problem that a business might have, and figuring out a better way of doing it, or a better way of reaching a new audience, or actually really great marketing is when you have an effect on the product itself, the price, where it's placed. It's these really interesting moments that you get in this industry, which is totally worth getting into. I mean, I'll be honest, that when I was at school, marketing was not a thing. It wasn't a route that you went into. There was no real sort of university degrees in it. I mean, I'm not that old, but at the same time, I'm old enough to know that this is actually a really important skill you're learning, which is way beyond what I've just been talking about. Really, what you're learning is this: that you'll have this ability to drop into any company who sells any product to any audience, and you've got the skills to understand the context in which that brand works and performs and succeeds, and how to make it better. That's the skills you learn in marketing. You become this essential business resource. You're like the special forces when you're marketing. You're often flown in to solve a shit fight and try to turn a negative quarter into a positive quarter. And there's a lot of pressure involved in that. But there are very few people who have got the skill set and the ability to drop into any company at all, and work out how to fit, how to help, how to generate growth. It's an essential business skill, which is one of those things that if you told me when I was 18, I wouldn't have bothered with the band, because actually I've never known anything more fascinating. It's like a superpower, being able to just go in and figure out how stuff works. It's a proper joy.
I agree. Any other questions? I don't want to hold everybody up. One more time, one more chance. All right. Well, I guess, Nick, everybody understood what you shared, and I do thank you for it. Now, this is the part of the program I'm going to ask everybody to show themselves, because it's the famous thumbs up to our special speaker. So those that are not on camera, please show yourself so we could do this and put it out into social media as a thank you. Everybody, they're coming on board. All right. So again, Nick, appreciate you doing this for us.
It's a pleasure.
And all right, everybody, let's get the thumbs up. Thumbs up. Thank Nick for the thumbs up. Let's get those thumbs up in the air. That's it. All right. All right. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Okay. So I'll put that up on LinkedIn as a thank you. Thank you.
It's marvelous.
Nick,
Thank you so much.
I hope my students say thanks as they log off. And we will see you on Zoom on Wednesday with Giles Martin.
Brilliant.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thank you so much. Oh, it's a joy. So thank you so much, Tom.
Nick, thank you, man. I appreciate that. Was awesome, man. Awesome.
Oh, brilliant.
All right. You
I'll
have
see
a good rest of the night, man. We will be in touch. Take
See you
care.
later. Oh.
All right. Bye-bye.